Education has always been the backbone of an American dream. You know, you've probably heard this saying from your parents. You've probably said this to your kids. In America, you can be anything when you grow up. All you've got to do is study hard and finish school. That little girl that I told you in the 5th grade, for the last several years, she's wanted to be an astronaut. And we've told her, if you study hard, you get good grades, you can be an astronaut in this country. Now, my youngest son, he's got a little bit of a harder goal. He tells me he wants to be Drew Brees when he grows up. I've tried to tell him he can't. I told him, look, you can play football, but you can't be somebody else. He doesn't quite get the difference. But the reality is your parents probably told you when you were growing up, if you work hard, if you eat your vegetables, if you go to school, you work hard, you do a good job, you can be whatever you want. How many of our parents looked at us and said, you could be a doctor, you could be a lawyer, you could be a teacher, you could be a mom, you could be a dad, you could be president of the United States? How many times our parents tell us that over and over? Now, I don't know, maybe it made you study harder in school, maybe it didn't. But deep down, you always remembered it. It always reassured you that all you had to do was to do well in school, you had to work hard, and you could accomplish your dreams. But the reality is that for students at failing schools, that dream doesn't always come true. At these failing schools, up to 2/3 of students are not even at a basic level of achievement. At these schools, pre-Katrina, you remember the story, a valedictorian at one of these schools once scored a 12 on the ACT. These failing schools are setting up our children for a life that we as parents would never want for them. Let me give you some sobering statistics, because I tell people, look, maybe you care about this because your children are going to school today, like mine. Maybe you care about this because you have grandchildren going to school. Maybe you care about this because you're an employer and you're worried about the quality of the workforce coming through your front doors. Or maybe you just care about this because you worry about the quality of life in Louisiana. Whether your kids are grown or not, we should all care about this because it impacts our lives right here in this great state. 70% of inmates at America's prisons can't read above a 4th grade level. 75% of food stamp recipients are high school dropouts. 85% of students brought into the juvenile justice system are functionally illiterate. 90% of welfare recipients are high school dropouts. And the list goes on and on and on. Whether you want to decrease general government spending, whether you want to improve our economy, whether you want to improve health care outcomes, whatever your goal, it comes back to education. For too long, though, we haven't given parents with children at failing schools any other choices. This is essentially saying to those parents who happen to live where schools are low achieving, tough luck. Your child is destined for health problems, run-ins with the law, lower income levels, just because the system says so. Now, let's be honest. I said this on the steps of the old Capitol during my inauguration. Most of us, those that can hear me today, we probably have the means to make sure that our children are put into a school where they'll get a great education. But we know that's simply not true for every child in Louisiana. And that's unacceptable. Parents and children should not be trapped in a failing school because of their zip code, their income, their gender, or their color. Every child has a right to an excellent education. That's the promise of America. And that's why our reform plan gives every child an opportunity to get a great education. We do this in 2 ways. We expand choices for parents, and we empower parents with more levers to affect change in the system. Our plan will expand the existing scholarship programs statewide for low-income students at C, D, and F schools. We're going to expand access to virtual schools, university programs, business programs, and advanced programs in science, technology, engineering, and math. We're going to make it easier for high-quality charter operators to open up and expand in our state. And we're going to help students who graduate early take the next step to college with an early graduation scholarship that they can use on top of whatever other financial aid they might receive. And we're going to empower parents with levers to affect change in their schools as well. We're going to create rebates for donations made to nonprofit organizations that offer scholarships to low-income students so that individuals and businesses can get more involved in their communities. Our plan will give parents with children in failing schools a parent trigger to vote their school into the Recovery School District after 3 years instead of 4. We will also allow community organizations, nonprofits, universities, and other local entities to apply to become charter authorizers to maintain local control of charter schools in their communities. Now, one other piece of our reform plan I also want to talk to you about is focusing on our earliest learners. In addition to empowering our parents, our teachers, our school leaders, we know we've got more work to do to make sure that every child has access to great early childhood education programs. We need to focus on our earliest learners. We need to empower the providers of those early childhood services and parents who are looking for the best option for their children. Today, we spend nearly $1.4 billion in publicly funded early childhood education and health care programs, not even counting another $150 million for a Head Start. Yet we have very little idea what kind of quality we are getting with these dollars. Only 52% of children are entering kindergarten ready to learn, and the funding streams are disjointed. The result is we're not leveraging the dollars we have today as effectively as we could, and we're not ensuring that students are receiving a high-quality early childhood education. Our plan will empower early childhood providers, preschools, and our parents by enabling early childhood providers to cut through the red tape, providing accountability to parents with letter grade rankings, and protecting taxpayers by cutting off public funding to and eventually shutting down low-performing programs. By improving our early childhood education programs, we will set high expectations so that our students enter kindergarten better prepared to learn. Now, as I wrap up, I want to share with you that what this plan could achieve for Louisiana families and Louisiana teachers. This is a vision for what Louisiana should be for our children and grandchildren. Right now, many families can help get their kids a great education by sending their kids to a private school. Yet these families still pay tax dollars to state and local governments. In effect, these families are paying twice for their children's education. On the other hand, we're punishing parents who can't afford to choose a better school, so instead they are stuck at a failing school. We're currently spending nearly $1 billion at these failing schools in Louisiana. That's not good government. That's not good financial stewardship of taxpayer dollars. That's not good planning for the economic future of our state, and it's simply unfair. The reality is it doesn't have to be this way. It doesn't have to, and it won't be with this package of reforms. Today we have a lot of different options in Louisiana. We have traditional public schools. We have charter schools, virtual schools, private schools, even opportunities to take classes at our universities. But each of these options operates on its own track, receiving dollars through a set funding stream and requiring parents to be experts at navigating a complicated system to figure out where to go and how to pay for it. That doesn't make sense. That's why our plans will create a total choice-based system where our families can take their taxpayer dollars to any of these different choices to get the best education for their children. You want a math and science focus? Take your dollars to a math and science charter school. You want more flexibility on hours? Take your dollars online. You want a parochial education? Take your dollars to a private religious school. Government should not be taking your taxpayer dollars and wasting them on programs that aren't working. Government should not be depriving you of choices with your dollars, but instead should be facilitating them. The bottom line is that parents know what's best for their children, not government. I trust parents to make good choices for their children. And that's why the other side says they don't want choice in Louisiana. When they say that, what they're really saying is they don't trust parents. That elitist mentality was never more evident than last week, a week ago today, when a union leader said that low-income parents, and I quote, have no clue when it comes to choosing the best education for their children. Those comments to me are offensive and inexcusable. That's exactly the type of top-down, arrogant mentality that has badly damaged our system of public education in this country. It amazes me that a week later he is still representing the union, that they have not distanced themselves from these comments. It shows how out of touch they are with the needs of parents and high-performing teachers. I had a chance to meet with some parents the very next day, and they told me in blunt terms, they make choices for their children every day. They told me in blunt terms they know their children better than bureaucrats in Baton Rouge or Washington, D.C. They know best how to meet the educational needs of their children. These reforms are about empowering moms like that to make the best decision for their own children. The next time you hear a union leader or somebody else say that parents have no clue about how to choose a school for their child, you should tell them a few things. Tell them it's ridiculous and insulting to say that any parent can't make decisions in the best interest of their children. Tell them that parents, regardless of their income or circumstances, know what's best for their child. Tell them that parents are the best accountability system we have. Meanwhile, our system is also crushing the teachers and leaders that are critical to the future of our children. We disempower the very people who work on a day-to-day basis with our children. That is totally backwards. Under our reforms, the teaching profession will finally get the respect it deserves. It will be the most revered profession in Louisiana. We want the best, the smartest, the hardest working to come into our classrooms and join with us in this fight for a high-quality education for every child. Whether you teach at a traditional public school, a charter school, a virtual school, or a private school, Join our team to create a system that rewards and recognizes you for the critical role you play in the quality of life in our great state. To the highly effective young teachers, to the excellent veteran educators, to the mid-career switchers who bring work experience to the classroom, we want you in our classrooms. To the innovative principals who lead their buildings every day, to the superintendents who are committed to improving student achievement, we are here to bring you relief from red tape. The way forward is to provide more choices to families. It's to reward teachers and give school leaders more flexibility with funding and personnel. I'll admit that's a pretty bold vision for what education could be in Louisiana. But our children deserve nothing less. The bottom line is that our kids only grow up once. We can't wait for the system to reform itself. It's about more than our children succeeding inside the classroom. It's about them succeeding in life. Our kids deserve an opportunity to succeed, and it's a basic right that everyone should be afforded in America. The time to act is now. You know, and before I close, I want to thank a couple of other people before I close my remarks. In addition to Steve Carter, you've got a number of legislators here. I want to thank, in addition to the House Chairman, we've got Conrad Appel, the Chairman of the Senate Education Committee. Both these leaders will be playing a critical role in this upcoming session. We've got a number of House members and Senate members sitting throughout the audience today. We've got John White. You'll be hearing from him later. I want to thank our senator, our senior senator from right here in Louisiana, our United States Senator Mary Landrieu, for being here. You know, and I think her presence speaks volumes. She and I may not agree on every detail of this plan or every specific item in our reform package, but we both agree. We both agree that it is time to demand reform for the children of Louisiana, that we can't wait any longer for our children. And I want to thank you for being here. But as I close, I've got a challenge for each and every one of you. I've been privileged to serve as your governor these last 4 years. And together we have fought and won some great battles. Did things that people didn't think were possible. Yes, we cut taxes, we revamped ethics, we went from 44th to #1 according to the Center for Public Integrity. And you know, how would you have felt if I'd stood up 4 years ago and said, well, we're 44, our goal is to be 43? How would you have felt if our football coaches got up and said, well, I shouldn't use that analogy, I'm sorry, that's maybe not the best analogy right now. We should be just as ambitious and aggressive when it comes to educational reform. The reality is this is the most important thing we can do for the future of our state. It's not just about the adults in this room. We've been through our education. It's about our children and our grandchildren. I'm going to need your help. These are big changes, and there are going to be powerful forces defending the status quo. I don't want you sitting on the sidelines. I don't want you watching from the cheap seats. I want everybody here to get involved. I want you to join me in this fight. Make the pledge today. You will do what it takes to improve our schools, to give every child an opportunity to get a great education, to make Louisiana the best place in the world to raise a family, to find a good-paying job. I need you to talk to your friends, talk to your neighbors, talk to the teachers in your communities, talk to your principals and superintendents, talk to your legislators. Tell them you want a better school system. You want choices, you want quality, you want opportunity. There's no time to wait. We're not going to settle for anything less than the best for our children. You know, in Louisiana, we've got this great tradition of preserving our history, our culture, and our traditions. That's a wonderful thing. But how many times, when you get folks in the room, how many times do you have people sitting around saying, do you remember what could have been? You know, decades ago, we had the oil and gas money that Texas had, and they invested theirs to diversify their economy and education. What if we had done that? Or how many times do you hear people in Louisiana saying, you know, in the 80s, New Orleans was even bigger than Miami? Or how many times do you hear people in Louisiana saying that it's ridiculous that Atlanta is being called the capital of the New South? That used to be New Orleans. Or that the banking capital is in North Carolina, or that Miami is the gateway to Latin and Central America. That used to be us. How many times do we look back and think about what used to be or what could have been? Well, I'm here to make a promise to you. If we will make these changes, our state will continue to outperform the rest of the country and the rest of the South, and we'll be #1 not just in football, but in the economic development, #1 in the quality of life, #1 in health outcomes. But I also promise you this. Years from now, just like we often look backwards and say, where were we when these decisions were made? Years from now, people are going to look back and ask, where were you in 2012? Did you show up for the fight to improve schools for our kids? Were you a part of the solution? Were you part of putting this state back on the right track? Or did you just watch from the sidelines? That's how important this fight is for the future of our state. So I appreciate everybody coming to this conference. By showing up, you've shown that you are committed to improving education for our kids. but our work has only just started. We now have to get busy to make sure that we don't settle for anything less than the best educational system in the entire country. Let's show that we believe in empowering our parents, our teachers, and our school leaders. Thank you all very much.